Vatican II recognized that the church cannot be just for the church. The church has to be for the world, and development of peace is the church's response to that.
When Jesus began his public ministry, he walked into a synagogue and proclaimed God's liberty and healing to the poor. In 1967, that mission statement was revitalized in the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. Now celebrating their Golden Jubilee, a look at the legacy of the grassroots, partner-based, gospel-inspired movement. Editor and longtime staffer Danny Gillis is here to discuss Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity, today on Subject Matters. Danny Gillis, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Great to be here, Sebastian.
Now, you're the 50th anniversary coordinator for Development and Peace, which is a big task. But tell me a little bit about the book. Where did the idea for the book come from, and what was the vision for it?
Well, I knew that Development and Peace had done a 25th anniversary book, so it was natural that we should think of doing one for the 50th. And since I was coordinator and I have experience writing books, I thought this is something I could do. So that's where the idea came from. I wanted it to include some history, but I really wanted it to paint a picture of development and peace at 50 years and through a number of different lenses, through movement, which is the people that belong to development and peace and the partners that we work with. Second was partnership, which is the groups that we work with in overseas, and I think Development and Peace has a really advanced, perhaps the most advanced notion of partnership. It's a word that's used by all stripes, but Development and Peace has a really advanced notion of that. And the third piece we wanted to do was advocacy, which means that we are advocating for groups of oppressed people, people who are marginalized, and trying to give them a voice. So we wanted to paint a picture of D&P through those three lenses.
Right. And Development and Peace is a global development agency. Obviously, you mentioned, concern for the poor, for helping people to rise out of poverty, to fight structural injustices and that kind of thing. But you mentioned that really important word, partnership, and you said it was unique. What is unique about Development and Peace's approach to partnership?
We are a group that began in the 1960s with an idea of helping the poor. Very quickly, we realized that the poor have to help themselves. And what we say in the book is that it begins with how you look at the poor. And we look at the poor as architects of their own history, as masters of their own destiny. And we want to be on board with them. They are the people that are going to change the world. So our notion of partnership is that we want to be supportive and we want to be part of the work that they're doing to liberate themselves.
That's totally revolutionary. Am I wrong? I mean, when I think about this and I read about the history of it in the book, it's absolutely remarkable, because so many times when people think about development or sending money to the poorer parts of the world, they think, we, the developed peoples, are giving charity to you people and you should be thankful and everything. But right from the beginning, as you say, that was axed. It was a totally different way of thinking about development, right?
Yeah, and it's really, we realized that you can't be in it for the short haul. You have to develop these partnerships that will be long-term. And that what we do is that we work with groups overseas in the Global South that will organize people to improve their lives. These partners that we have in the Global South are kind of the intermediaries. We work with them, they work with groups of organized poor to improve their lives. And I think that's a notion that often Canadians don't realize, that that's how we work. It's through these partners that then are the groups that really support change to happen.
And it's a very effective model, actually, and we'll get into some of the examples that come out in the book a bit later. But you know, most Canadians know development and peace at the local level. I mean, it's a grassroots movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people will know that there's a DNP rep in their parish, for example, and all across the country. But talk to me about this balance between doing development in the global south and also educating or mobilizing the Canadian Catholic population as well. That's a twofold dynamic that development and peace has held on to for the last 50 years, but why that twofold dynamic?
Yeah, well, when the bishops first founded Development and Peace, their first priority was to educate the Canadian population. And so we have, right from the beginning, looked at that as such an important part of our mandate. And it's to really evangelize Canadians through the work that we do with the poor in the global south. So the poor are, can we say, more capable of love because that's what they have. They don't have material goods, they have each other, and it's through the love that they have for each other that they can improve their communities, and they have to work together for that. So we hope that by Canadians seeing this kind of activity that our brothers and sisters in the Global South are involved in, that they will be inspired and they will be evangelized and understand how much Jesus loves the poor, and they will also improve their own understanding of Jesus' message.
Yeah, and their own sense of being a Christian. I mean, that comes out so strongly in the book when you read the people who are involved in all these campaigns over the years. There's major transformations that have taken place in people's lives. I mean, people's eyes have been opened to a new reality about how you think about relationships, how you think about partnership, how you think about injustice. So it really is remarkable. Let's talk about some of the creative tensions that exist in the structure of development and peace. And I'm thinking of two in particular that I know are very evident. One of them is the French-English dynamic, that development and peace is unique because everything is totally bilingual and, you know, held together, as I said, in this creative tension. But this whole English-French dynamic, how has that played out over the last 50 years?
Well, I think one of the influences, the Bishops' Conference itself, it is also integrated. There aren't a lot of organizations across Canada that are that integrated in terms of French-English. Even other NGOs that started as integrated, they split into French and English. In the beginning, we set up a French education sector and an English education sector. Not because we didn't want to work together, it was because we did. We had the same campaigns, but they were delivered differently. And that has actually changed. Now we are totally integrated. It's one of the things we've had to do over time just because of the financial issues, but also understanding that the more integrated we are, the more powerful we are.
And it's not always easy, am I right, to maintain that balance? No,
it's not always easy. There's times, I think, when we struggle, but I think it's been a very, very successful experiment, and a lot of groups should look to development peace as a model for that.
Absolutely. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, more with Danny Gillis, and we'll look at some of the campaigns over DNP's 50-year history that have really made an enormous difference in the world. Please stay with us. Danny Gillis joined Scarborough Missions as a lay missioner in 1984. He spent 3 years living among the Manobo in the mountains of Mindanao, Philippines. Then in 1992, he began working with Development and Peace in Toronto, first as coordinator of animators, then as education program coordinator. In 2007, he moved back to his hometown of Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and became animator for the Atlantic provinces. And in 2015, he was asked to coordinate the organization's 50th anniversary program. Danny has written or coordinated 3 books, including a novel, Where the Rivers Meet, published in 2016. Our vision of partnership starts with a look. It begins in how we see the poor. We do not see the poor as less than. They are poor because they are victims of injustice and oppression. But neither do we see them primarily as victims, nor do we see them as beneficiaries, recipients, or development targets. For Development and Peace, we see the poor as the protagonists of their own history. We see the poor as agents of their own development and creators of their own future. It is for that reason that we want to become partners with the poor. We want to support their right to live in fullness and dignity. We want to be an ally in their struggles for liberation. We're back with Danny Gillis discussing Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity, which is the anniversary book for development and peace. And Danny, just before the break, we were talking about the creative tensions that exist in the organization, one of them being the French-English dynamic. But another one that's very interesting is the bishops and laity dynamic, that this is an organization that was founded by the Canadian bishops after the Vatican Council in the 1960s, but they put it in the hands of lay people. Talk to me about that relationship, that partnership over the last 50 years, how it's developed, how it's grown.
Yeah, in the beginning, the bishops looked at this organization that they were setting up as an organization of the people of God. So that includes the laity, the bishops, the clergy, religious, all working together for this common cause. But the understanding was that it would be a lay-led movement. And the bishops had 2 seats on the National Council, our board of directors. For many years there was 2 seats, so they had two voices out of 21. And that gave Development and Peace a great deal of independence or autonomy in terms of our board making decisions with bishops' input, but not kind of bowing to the authority of the bishops, if you will. More recently, the bishops have formed a standing committee, standing commission, that it was mutually decided that the bishops would leave the board and form the standing committee, which has a committee from Development and Peace meet with them 3 times a year, a liaison committee. So I think it changes the dynamic. The bishops now they can focus on the issues that are most concerning to them, which is good. Sometimes they may say this issue will cause problems for some bishops. And I think it's up to Development and Peace to have strong leadership so that we can meet with the bishops on equal footing, and we don't always have to say, oh, I'm scared of that now, because some bishops may be scared about the direction or think it's too political a direction that we're heading in. So it's really important that we have strong leadership and that we can be seen as the experts in the work that we do in development. So those tensions will always be there, but I think it really has to be a very respectful relationship that we have, and understanding that we're an organization of the people of God.
And it strikes me too, remembering the original charism, which is, the bishops came back and they wanted it to be, if you want to call it, an independent organization. I mean, it's important not to forget your roots. Mm-hmm. Let's look at some of the campaigns that are discussed in the book. Some really incredible, beautiful stories are told here. And we learned that Development and Peace was really at the heart of some major global transformations. I'm thinking of, apartheid in South Africa, for example. Extraordinary. There's one local DNP council in the entire country that's named after a person, Brother Jim McSheffrey, and that's in St. John's, Newfoundland. Tell me about that story.
Yeah, there's quite a few stories that are very personal in the book, and this is one of the most personal ones. It's a very short story. We asked a man named Paul Rowe to write it. Brother Jim McSheffrey was a Jesuit brother who worked in St. John's, Newfoundland. He was originally from Ontario. He worked in St. John's with the poor. He set up a house where he would be able to reach out to the poor with hampers, with clothing, with all kinds of charitable works. But he also volunteered with Development of Peace. It was all the same for him. It was social justice and charity mixed together. But Brother Jim was an amazing individual, well-loved, very modest man. Never one to blow his own horn, but everybody that he encountered recognized how special he was. He died much too young in an accident, picking blueberries, actually, if you can believe that. So it was a very tragic loss when he fell over a cliff. And it was such a tragic loss, and the people of St. John's decided to name their diocesan council after Jim. And so it's called the Brother Jim McSheffrey Diocesan Council. It's the only one named after an individual.
And it's a great Canadian story, you know. But let's jump, abroad. Let's look at the campaign to help the victims of the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. This was a disaster. The staggering numbers of people were killed. In the book, the person who writes the article says that no international NGO nor any multilateral body has achieved comparable results in Haiti, despite huge financial resources at the disposal of those NGOs. Why was DNP so effective in responding to that catastrophe?
It's really because the Development and Peace works with long-term partners in the countries that we work in. So we were able, after the Haiti earthquake, to go there and round up the partners that we work with, groups like S2E10, which is the one that that article you're mentioning is focused on. Originally, we want to do what you would expect in emergency situations, which is to feed the poor and the people who are affected, and to give them clothing and shelter. But very quickly, our focus turns to long-term development, and because we have these long-term partners, that have experience in organizing people, they were able to organize the building of 660 houses in a small commune in a devastated area of Haiti. The story tells about how they were able to actually open a factory to produce the bricks for the houses, and that is now the biggest employer in the area. So it has many spin-offs. Besides building earthquake-resistant houses, they have created jobs. They've trained apprentices and craftspeople to learn new trades. It's an amazing story. Yeah. Do
you have a favorite story about one of these campaigns, or in your history of development and peace? When you're putting this book together, you're looking at all these stories. Is there one that jumps out to you?
Yeah, there's one in the partnership section that was written by an organization in the Philippines called APO-AMF. It's a group that lived along a man-made floodway in Manila. I met them in 2014 when I led a group of Development Peace members there. And we asked them to write about their experience in, because they live in a very tenuous situation and in a dangerous area close to this natural floodway, or this man-made floodway, they're always in danger of being evicted. Even though they live in pretty ramshackle houses, they wanted to stay there because they had employment nearby. The government wanted to move them out. They were always under threat of eviction. So eventually they realized they had to organize and find long-term adequate housing for them. And this story talks about how they went about that. And it was through a Development and Peace partner, the intermediaries that I talk about, that they were able to organize, and I think they talk about 13 different government organizations that they had to coordinate with to get a number of apartment buildings built for their people. So the first two were inaugurated last August, and the President of the Philippines was there on hand for this joyful inauguration.
Remarkable. We have another guest with us today, actually one of the contributors to the book. Peter Baltutis is a church historian at St. Mary's University in Calgary. He's also an expert on the history of development and peace. He wrote the first chapter of Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity. Peter.
It's a great honor and privilege to be part of this really important and dynamic book project, Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity. So my contribution to this book project was very simple. I was asked by the editors to do two things. Number one, I was asked to look at what was the reason for creating development and peace in the first place. And then secondarily, once they had this original vision, how did they realize that vision? How did they implement policies and procedures that really set the standards that have followed development and peace for the last 50 years? So my research came really from the archives, both of Development and Peace, and also looking through the archives of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops. And looking through these archives, what really becomes clear is that Development and Peace is not simply a movement that began in 1967, but it began during the Second Vatican Council. So from 1962 through 1965, the 80 or so Canadian bishops that were at the council really were spiritually transformed by the experience, and by two documents in particular. Number one, Gaudium et Spes, the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the Modern World. This document speaks about the Catholic Church's reclaiming its prophetic voice and speaking out on behalf of justice in the world. and development and peace was meant to be how the Canadian Catholic Church embodied Gaudium et Spes. But equally importantly, is development and peace was also meant to be the embodiment of Lumen Gentium, the dogmatic constitution on the Church. Lumen Gentium speaks about the Church not being a top-down hierarchy, but rather, and development and peace was meant to be the living embodiment of this, but the entire people of God. And in the founding documents, it talks about development and peace being, and this is underlined and in bold letters, a bishops, clergy, lay association. So all people, the entire church, working together towards social justice. That's the vision. So, once they have this vision, how do they realize it? And a really big part of the story is the work of Romeo Maione, the first executive director of Development and Peace. Maione, a Catholic layman, took this vision, and his insight was to say that Development and Peace was not meant to be simply a fundraiser. It's not trying to just raise money for those in the global south, but it's meant to educate and then spiritually form its members. So my chapter talks about over the last several decades, Development and Peace goes out educating the population, but also builds action plans that lead towards concrete ways that the Catholic Church can help build this vision of justice. So, over the last 50 years, this small beginnings of a movement has grown to now encapsulate over 13,000 Canadian Catholics. This is the largest Catholic movement inside of Canada. And over the last 50 years, they've had their joys, their triumphs, and their sorrows and struggles. But my chapter speaks about what was the founding vision and how did that vision inform what's happened over the last 50 years. I hope you enjoy.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for that. We have to take one more break, but we'll be back with some concluding remarks from Danny Gillis. Please stay with us. Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity is published by Novalis and is available for purchase at novalis.ca, at devp.org, and at Ben McNally Books in Toronto.
The book is dedicated to Romeo Maione. He was the first executive director of Development and Peace. He was a son of Italian immigrants, a grade school education, but he was a big, powerful man who could command the attention of a whole room full of people. And more importantly, it was the way he saw the poor as masters of their own destiny that inspired people. And also, he didn't want people to see the poor as just passive recipients of northern generosity. He wanted Canadians to understand them as architects of their own history.
I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to Development and Peace and its members for your solidarity with our people in their striving for a non-racial and democratic South Africa. Your recent presentation of 120,000 petitions to the Canadian government urging total sanctions against South Africa was appreciated as a genuine demonstration of support for our struggle. Hoping to see you in a free South Africa very soon. Nelson Mandela, May 5th, 1990. Now, Danny, you don't do the work of justice that Development and Peace is involved with without running into some hostility and some powerful hostility. I'm thinking especially of, governments that stand to lose power or corporations that stand to lose money and influence because of the advocacy and the partnerships, the programs that Development and Peace is working on supporting in the Global South. How does the organization deal with that? Because that is enormously challenging, I can imagine.
Yeah, I think what we do is try to be honest. We try to analyze the situation of the people of a country and say this, if they're being oppressed, to be honest about that and to take on the governments or the corporations that are creating the oppression. So in my experience, we haven't really shied away from any issues because we're afraid of stepping on people's toes. Yeah.
I look at the work that Development and Peace does, it's really extraordinary, but I wonder sometimes, are we any closer to improvement? I mean, the world still seems to be in such a terrible shape or getting worse. How do you keep hope? How do you keep hope alive in an organization like Development and Peace 50 years into it, after much success, but also a lot more work to do?
I think we take hope from how people have responded to our programs. Earlier in the program I talked about this group in the Philippines, and I remember the last line in the book of that article was, they said, collectively we feel that there's nothing we can't do. So it's the empowerment of people, I think, that gives us hope. We also take hope from trends like Pope Francis, of course. He has given us great hope with his June 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. That has been a great revolutionary boost for our work, I think, by showing how the social crisis that we're in is so connected to the environmental crisis that the world is in. And these two have to be worked on as one crisis. And he has really asked us to undergo a paradigm shift in the way we look at the world. He's talked about of creating ecological conversion and a movement to help the poor escape the poverty that they have been forced into.
And I see so much of that already in Development and Peace. I mean, the prophetic voice, especially around some of the ecological issues, is remarkable. I mean, you can read about the campaigns in the book. One more question for you, Danny. I'm thinking, you know, in your 50 years, for a Canadian Catholic who doesn't know about Development and Peace or is not a member of Development and Peace, because it is a member-based organization, why should a Catholic in Canada consider becoming a member of DNP?
The Vatican II asked recognized that the Church cannot be just for the Church. The Church has to be for the world. And Development of Peace is the Church's response to that that manifesto that came out of Vatican II. So I think that all Catholics should recognize that they have a responsibility, but also their own lives, their own faith can be enriched by belonging to an organization like Development of Peace, which really tries to do God's work in the world. I think the quote on the back of the book about how Jesus went into his hometown and said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I've come to bring good news to the poor." That really is his mission statement at the beginning of his ministry, his public ministry. And I think if you read that, you understand why you should be involved with Development and Peace.
Danny Gillis, thank you very much. Congratulations on the book, and congratulations to Development and Peace on 50 remarkable years.
Thank you very much, Sebastian.
The book is Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity, edited by Danny Gillis. You can get it online from Novalis at novalis.ca and from Development and Peace at devp.org. And you can get it right here at Ben McNally Books in Toronto. Danny is the 50th anniversary coordinator and a longtime staff person at Development and Peace. You can learn more about DNP's history and the 50th at devp.org/50years. I want to thank our guest contributor today. Peter Baltutis is Assistant Professor of History and Catholic Studies at St. Mary's University in Calgary. His doctoral dissertation was the first historical examination of Development and Peace, and he authored the opening article in Jubilee. And remember, if you'd like to see my video review of Jubilee, 50 Years of Solidarity, visit our website, saltandlighttv.org/subjectmatters, and click on the episode with Danny. That's all the time we have for today, but we'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us. Subject Matters with Sebastian Gomes is sponsored by the Cullen family. Our Salt and Light team works hard to bring you quality Catholic programming like Subject Matters. Please consider sponsoring our mission and making a donation today. Thank you for your generosity, and remember, our hope begins with you.